So our first presenter is past District Governor Leanne Shearing from the Rotary Club of Harare West, Zimbabwe, as I've mentioned. I'm not going to be focusing on our speakers' Rotary experience because I'm wanting to actually present them to you in their professional capacity. So Leanne has worked in various aspects of the travel and tourism sector in Zimbabwe from 1975 to 2001, including marketing, safari consultancy, air hostess, and lodge management. So she joined the financial sector in January 2002, initially administering a remuneration scheme for corporate executives before moving into asset management as client liaison officer until December 2012. Leanne then decided to follow her passion and left to open her own training consultancy firm, The Learning Curve, where she specializes in, amongst other things, strategic planning, business ethics, team building and respect, sustainable leadership. She has conducted successful team building and strategy sessions for a number of Zimbabwean organizations and change leaders. As part of her vocation, she volunteers to do pro bono work for charity. She's been on the board of the Cancer Association of Zimbabwe for 7 years and on the board of the Rotary Africa magazine for 4 years. In her downtime, she loves to read, to cook when the mood takes her, and gets inspired by being in nature and photographing the natural world. I've personally been privileged to be in one of Leanne's training sessions, and I can tell you that I walked out there more enriched and informed than when I previously got there. And Leanne, your bio contains a lot of S's and I've been stumbling over them. So please excuse me for stuttering over my words, and more over to you, Leanne. Do you need to screen share?
Evening, Grace. No, I decided this evening that I would just talk because yes, I'm passionate about Rotary and I'm passionate about my country, although it is much maligned, as we all know, in the press worldwide. So again, hi everybody, I'm Leanne Shearing. My club is the Rotary Club of Harare West. Although not as long serving as the Rotary Club of Johannesburg, we celebrate our 57th birthday on October the 22nd, and we are going to have a virtual 60s get together because we were chartered in 1964. So we thought it would be quite fun for the clubs that we sponsored and us to get together to have this virtual laid back 60s theme meeting. So my Rotary Club are very involved in youth. We have one Rotaract club who's very effective, which we do a lot of work with, both socially and with projects. And we also have 7 Interact clubs. Bearing in mind that our club only has 16 members at the moment, I just think that we're doing extremely well on the youth side. One of the major focus areas for us for the last 7 years has been literacy, but not in the sense of textbooks to schools, but rather reading books to schools, because I believe, and many of my club members also believe, that the best gift you can give a child is a love of reading. So we send reading books to rural schools throughout Zimbabwe, and the very first lot of books that we sent out were actually to game rangers scattered into the very remote areas, because they have very little and they protect our wildlife. So why should their children suffer from not being near any schools? So that was how we very first got involved in the book. And we've been running this project now for 7 years in conjunction with Books for Africa, which is based in Atlanta in Georgia. Another thing is that our newsletter is called the Leander News, which is quite unusual because we're the Rotary Club of Harare West. But it's called the Leander News because when we very first started meeting in 1964, we met at a local hotel, the Jamison Hotel, in the Leander Room. And so the name has never been changed. It's a part of history that we like to refer to. So our newsletter is still called the Leander News 57 years on. The last item I think of interest for my Rotary Club is we had a very, very special Rotarian who actually passed on just before his 104th birthday. His name was Bill Green. And in Harare, we have a Rotary Center, and the coffee shop at that Rotary Center is named after Bill Green. It's the Bill Green Coffee Shop. So that's a little bit of history and fun about our Rotary Club of Harare West. Now onto my beautiful and much maligned country of Zimbabwe. We have half the population of Zimbabwe is under 21, so it's a very young population, and 90% of our population is educated, although we have obviously had challenges during the COVID pandemic because schools were closed and not every child had access to online education, which is something that we are trying to look at going forward. We are a landlocked country. We have one of the largest by volume lakes in the world, although we do share it with Zambia, our northern neighbor. 13% of the 27.2% of protected areas is given over to national parks, and we have 8 national parks. And of course, I'm sure you all know this doesn't belong to South Africa, but Victoria Falls is part of Zimbabwe. And again, we also share it with our northern neighbors. It is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. I've traveled extensively. I guess home is where the heart is, and my heart is definitely here. But we have something for everyone. We have magnificent golf courses dotted around Zimbabwe, real professionally laid golf courses, and some of them are extremely challenging. And I've frightened a lot of ducks in my very short-lived golfing career with some of the holes, especially in the eastern districts. We have mountains, we have cold trout streams. Of course, we have wildlife, and we have 2 heritage sites, Victoria Falls and Mana Pools. So that's my beautiful country in a nutshell, and you are all welcome to visit as soon as the borders are open. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Leanne. Grace? Grace, are you still there? Could you please just introduce our next club? But Leanne, I must say this before we actually go into our next club, is that I totally agree with you that the best gift you can give a child is the love of reading, because research has also shown that early reading ignites creativity, you know, how it sparks a curiosity and it stimulates their minds. I'm such a lover of reading. I had the benefit of having great teachers who taught me how to read earlier on, and I imparted that on my daughter as well. From 2 years old, I was teaching her how to read, because I know the value of reading early and how you can also have some form of independence in that you can explore the world around you through being given those tools to be able to read on your own. So I totally agree with you in that when I had to say that before we move to our next presenter.
Thank you, Tembi. And President Buani, you are very privileged because you have the choir of the bullfrogs as your backing vocals this evening. As long as my mic is off, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. But Buyani is from the Rotary Club of Mbuluzi, Mbabane in Eswatini, which is formerly Swaziland. He's a oh my goodness. I think he's a geologist, but there's a funny name in his CV, okay? He's with the Geological Survey Department, which is a government entity. He got into geosciences somewhat by chance when he started a maths and science teacher qualification, and upon graduation from the University of Eswatini in 2006. He enjoyed his time as a teacher because he got to see the kind of responsibility one has when you nurture young minds, just open and ready to grasp whatever they see and hear. Outside of the professional space, he has developed an interest in using entrepreneurship to address societal challenges, what you could call social entrepreneurship. Having noticed the struggles by young people, particularly girls and young women, as well as others in low-paying jobs, he started a cosmetics business in 2018, where a distribution team could stock up on products to supplement their income. Through social media advertising, the concept was well received, and there is a constant team of about 25 to 30 distributors who have benefited. Some have since grown into bigger and better things as entrepreneurs, and that is gratifying. At home, he is a husband and a father to 3 young daughters. He doesn't look old enough to have 3 young daughters, but his daughters have been coerced into supporting all his favorite sports teams. So I think it's a man of influence, this. So they don't fight over what to watch on weekends. He enjoys his coffee and travel. And without anything further, Buwani, I hand over to you.
All right. Thank you for the introduction, Pipi Grace. And good evening once again, Rotarians. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'll also follow Leanne's example, and I'll just speak. I won't take too long. And I was asked to separate my talk into a few facts about my country, Eswatini, and a few facts about my club as well, the Rotary Club of Mbuluzi, Mbabane. So before I go too far, I'll just say that I got to know past President Grace recently. She was a guest in one of our club meetings, and she took us through a lot of the wonderful work that is done by Rotary and the district in polio. And there's lots of nice, exciting things that have come up since her talk. Because it so happened that a week after her talk, one of our Rotarians went for vaccination for his son, and he found that the hospital had run out of polio drops, which is, well, vaccination is free in the country. So that was a bit of a shock, and it just coincided with the talk by past President Grace, and she was able to step in, and I understand a lot of good work in partnership with the government has come out of that talk and that visit from PP Grace. So about my country, Eswatini, as PP Grace said, until recently it was known as Swaziland. So it's one of about 11 countries that have had a name change in the last few years in recent history. So some people might remember Swaziland, but it's Eswatini now. It changed in 2018. And it's a neighbor to South Africa and Mozambique. It's a small country, 17,000 square kilometers. So it takes, it's about 200 kilometers to drive from one end of the country to the other. And it relies heavily on tourism. The last tourism stats we had pre-COVID in 2019 showed that we had almost 1 million South Africans visiting the country and generating R1 billion roughly in income through the tourism sector. And in that same space, we had over 100,000 Mozambican visitors as well, generating another substantial amount. I just forgot the figure. So you can see just how heavily reliant we are on the tourism space. So also our club, the Rotary Club of Mbuluzi, Mbabane, is one of 2 clubs in the same city, but we had to change the name because you can't have the same name for 2 clubs in the same city. So Mbuluzi is an area on the outskirts of Mbabane, which is the capital city. And it's also known for one of the most, what can I say, one of the most well-known landmarks, which is the 2nd largest granite outcrop known as Sibebe. I'm going to put it on the chat so that you can check out what it's all about. because it's also the name of our biggest fundraiser as a club. So we have something like 5,000 people coming through for that event every year, and they hike to the top of that rock. And from that event, when we last had it before COVID, obviously you can't have it now due to lockdown and gatherings and stuff like that. The last one we had could generate over R1 million for the club, which was a lot. And that amount allowed the club to do so much. In fact, we are one of the few clubs in the country that can do almost all 6, well now 7 focus areas of Rotary, because of the kind of funding we generate from that event. So it's quite significant, because in other places, you will find that people make money through corporate partnerships and things like that. But for our club, that fundraiser alone makes so much money. But we also work with a lot of grants. The last one we had was close to $1 million. So it is for an orphanage in one of the towns in Eswatini, where they do a lot of amazing work. They take orphans from as young as 2 years and they put them in the camp, and they take them through school. There's free education for them. And right now, the last grant is so that they can build a vocational center. So all the people who grow and come up through the ranks can get a trade, and it allows them to, to go ahead and make a life of their own. So it's going to be an example of what you can do in terms of nurturing people from infancy all the way. And it's particularly significant for those without parents and homes. So the COVID basically, I would say, has devastated our club. And naturally, we have been looking at ways to change tact and to see what we can do right now. And what we have done lately, some projects that we're working on, have happened by collaborating with the diaspora of young people who are in schools across the world. And again, almost similar to what Lian was saying, they came up with the concept to see what we can do to tap into the education space, which is something we're passionate about. Actually, every year we pay school fees for people who come from, young people who come from child-headed homesteads or orphans. So we have a group of, at any given time, it's anything between 20 and 50 of them. But now what has happened is that naturally, if you think of COVID and remote learning, it's easier to do in the urban areas because their parents can afford to buy the devices, they can afford to, they have access to fast internet or internet in the first place, not just fast internet, but internet. It's a heavy cost. Our internet costs are rated as probably, in the region, it's probably second highest, if not the highest in the SADC region. So you can imagine how expensive it is. Some of the service providers have tried to minimize the cost, but for a country with something like 60% of the people below the poverty line, it's still too much for them. So what we're trying to do with the kids in the diaspora is that they are fundraising so that we can work with the service providers to subsidize the cost of internet straight from university all the way down to primary school level. And we are also speaking to other people in the IT sector now to look at the gadgets themselves, because it's one thing getting access to the internet, but what about the gadget? Because some cannot even afford those gadgets. So we will be piloting that with a small group of young people to see how far we can take it. What we noticed also from the past, pre-COVID, we've had so many projects in the education space, one of which was one where we gave solar panel study lamps that are solar powered. And we deliberately took them to the rural areas because we wanted to see what would happen if somebody who comes from a home without electricity can do if they had a few more hours to study. And it was remarkable because in a matter of like 8 weeks, some of those kids jumped from struggling to complete assignments, struggling to read, and they were now above average, and in no time they were topping the charts in their schools. So we saw immediately that there was potential for that, and anything that can be done in the education space, particularly in the rural areas, we're willing to do. And these are some of the things we're discussing as a club and the things we're looking to do. And obviously it helps to partner with other clubs, and that is why it's important for the club to be in this meeting to see what you can get out of it. Thank you so much for listening, everyone.
Thank you very much, Wani. It's very inspiring how your club is doing well in your income generation, which you refer to as fundraising events as opposed to corporate partnerships. I think this clearly reflects well in your social entrepreneurship skills, which Grace mentioned when introducing you. And thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Grace, will you please introduce our next presenter?
Thank you, Tembi. And I just need to say that Tembi is doing an amazing job as our MC. So well done, Tembi. But our next guest doesn't need a lot of introduction because he's been a visitor at our club for a lot of our meetings. But Darren sent me this whole CV. It's a 3-page CV just about his Rotary career. And the CVs of our presenters are available in the chat, and you are welcome to go and check that out. I'm not going to share his Rotary CV with you. I just need to remove Buyani from the pin on my screen before I carry on. So Darren Hands is the immediate past president of the Rotary Club of Plympton in Plymouth. But more than his remarkable Rotary CV, he's an experienced auditor with a demonstrated history of working in the education management industry. He's skilled in coaching, events management, public speaking, charity fundraising, team building, and management. He's got a strong accounting and compliance professional background, and he graduated from Plymstock Comprehensive. More than his professional career, Darren is also a budding artist, and he's often on Facebook posting him and his wife Melanie's wonderful work that they do in their art classes on a weekly basis. And every morning I cannot wait to go and look at Darren's Facebook feed to see what interesting photographs he's taken over the weekend. He loves taking photographs of birds and wildlife, but he recently attended a concert, a rock concert, and maybe he'll tell us about that. And he took loads and loads of photos. So I love watching Darren's progress in photography, and he's just graduated in quite a few of the recognitions or courses that were available to him. So Darren, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you, Grace. I'll just share my screen a second and try and get my presentation up here. So if you can just bear me a second. I always feel like the light entertainment, because I've got a few bits of light entertainment in my presentation today. But as Grace mentioned, I'm from over here in the UK, from a relatively small city called Plymouth, a population of just over 250,000 people. My district, District 1175, is Rotary in the Southwest Peninsula. It's basically made up of 2 counties here in Great Britain, Cornwall, otherwise known as Carno, which is the Cornish for Cornwall. They're very patriotic. They actually almost want to have independence, and Devon. Plymouth sits right on the border between the 2 counties. And if you ever want to start an argument with someone from Cornwall or from Devon, just mention cream teas. Cream teas, scones, I don't know if you're aware, it's like sort of little cake type things, usually with jam and cream on. The Cornish will say the jam goes on first and then the cream. They're wrong. The correct way is you put the cream on first and then the jam. As I say, if you ever want to start a fight, just tell a Cornish person they're doing it the wrong way and just light that blue touch paper and just wait for the fireworks to explode. It's great fun, I tell you. Here in Plymouth, there's currently 5 Rotary clubs. The Rotary Club of Plymouth, which is the oldest one, formed in, I think, 1921. Rotary Club of Plymouth Mayflower, the Mayflower name we'll touch upon again in a little while. The Rotary Club of Plympton, which is my old club. Rotary Club of Roborough, my current club, and the Rotary Club of Saltram. There were 2 other clubs here directly within the city boundaries until a few years ago, the Rotary Club of Plymouth Albion and the Rotary Club of Drake. There were 3 Rotaract clubs, Plymouth, Plympton and Saltram. And we've had 3 inner wheel clubs. I think there's only 1 still in existence, which is connected to my current club, Roborough. And through a collaboration between the Roborough Inner Wheel Club and Rotary Club of Roborough, we've also managed to form a Rotary Kids Club, which is the sort of precursor to Interact. I think in some parts of the world it's called Early Years. It's not an official recognised program of Rotary, but that's like a sort of precursor to Rotary, and we've got one of those clubs here in Plymouth. I know I've been joined here online tonight by a good friend of mine, Ross Dent. He's from Rotary Club Yelverton, which is just outside of Plymouth. So, Ross, you're outside of the club boundary, you're outside of the city boundaries, which is why I've not included Yelverton there. My own personal Rotary journey, I joined Junior Chamber pretty much straight after school when I started work. As that started falling apart, I joined Rotaract. Then I helped form the Plymouth Albion Rotary Club, which was one of the new pilot project clubs back in the early 2000s. At the same time, I joined Round Table. I then progressed to Rotary Club Plympton, which I served as a president twice. And in the last month or two, I've joined the Rotary Club of Roborough. The great thing is the Rotary Club of Roborough is very similar to my old club. Both clubs have served the community by providing defibrillators in the local communities. And Roborough have actually also provided funds for local community first responders. These are local volunteers who get paged by the 999 service we have here to go to some of the lower category emergency calls ahead of paramedics to just lighten the load of the paramedics. I've got a slight vested interest in my wife, Mel, who you can see in the picture there. She is actually one of the community first responders who cover the north of Plymouth. And it's great that my Rotary Club have actually helped fund these volunteers. What's not so, what I'm not quite so keen on is the fact that Mel keeps wanting to try to practice the defibrillators on me. I keep telling her I've not had a heart attack yet. Until my heart stops beating, please don't try and use one. But she's hell-bent on trying it out at some point. Something else that a lot of clubs here in the UK do is the Purple for Polio crocus planting. Purple crocuses representing the purple pinky for children when they get immunised. The photographs on the left-hand side are my new club, Roborough, planting crocuses on one of the roundabouts leading into Plymouth. The other photographs are some of the 25,000 plus crocuses that Plymouth Rotary planted in Plymouth City Centre over the last few years. When we come into bloom, it makes a fantastic sight. A field of green just turns purple for 3 or 4 weeks towards the end of February each year. Something else a lot of Rotary clubs here in the UK do is celebrate Christmas. We do a lot of Christmas collections. To us, it's not just about raising funds, it's the community aspect. So many times when we've done these Christmas collections, old age pensioners come out and say, I remember when you guys came out here when I was a little child. To me, Christmas doesn't start until we see the Rotary Christmas collections. So it brings that Christmas spirit. And certainly last year with the COVID situation, some clubs weren't able to actually do collections at all. But some clubs, we found different ways of doing the collections, but we were hell-bent on making sure that Santa could actually be taken around the streets of our communities, just trying to bring a bit of Christmas cheer to the local communities. And so it's not, as I say, it's not just about fundraising, it's about the community aspect of the Christmas spirit there. Rotary Club also have a major project which they run, which is the Literacy in a Box. This primarily operates in Zambia. They did look at South Africa at one stage, but for some reason they chose Zambia in the end. But it's basically very much like some of the other box charities. They recognised that some of the schools lacked educational resources. So for 350 British pounds, they're able to kit out schools with exercise books, pencils, pens, rulers, chalk, even things like footballs and skipping ropes, just so the youngsters can get exercise, which is a great thing to do, just trying to help the education. And they've been doing that project since I think around about 2003, 2004. The reason they just concentrate on Zambia, I actually raised this question today at our meeting. It's purely down to the logistics of trying to get the boxes to certain points. They've got trusted sources where they can get these boxes shipped over and then passed on to the necessary schools. And it'd be very remiss of me, although it's not a club project, it'd be remiss of me not to mention the Rotarians for Mental Health Don't Bottle Up Mental Health Awareness campaign, which I know several of you know a tiny bit about because I've spoken to some of your clubs about before. This is the Mental Health Awareness campaign, which I started back in 2017, which is just growing and growing. I know in Nigeria, for instance, all 4 Rotary districts there have embraced it as a district-wide project this year. I know there's a district in Canada who've done it. I think we've got over 100 Rotarians Rotaract members, Interact members, and public figures involved in this campaign now, just trying to spread that message about not bottling up mental health issues and trying to encourage people to get help. Moving on, I'm not going to talk so much about my country, but I will touch upon it in a minute. I want to talk more about my city, really, because I'm a proud Janner. A Janner is someone who was born in Plymouth. It's a generic term for someone who was basically born or lives near the sea. But I'm proud to be a Janner. So I just want to touch upon my city, really, rather than the actual country. Plymouth, which is dubbed Plymouth's Ocean City. Plymouth Sound is one of the world's largest natural harbours. We're a fishing port, but we've got this natural harbour on one side of the city where we recently had a big sailing competition. But to the other side, we've got Dartmoor National Park. If you've read books like Sherlock Holmes and Hound of the Baskervilles, that's set on Dartmoor. So you've got the wilds of Dartmoor on one side, and then you've got the sea on the other side. Really, down here in Plymouth, we have got everything. We are so lucky down here. Plymouth is quite famous around the world, though. Certainly, the Americans will be aware of it because just over 400 years ago, the Pilgrim Fathers departed from Plymouth, sailing for the New World. We commemorate that here in Plymouth with Mayflower Steps, which is the photograph you got in the middle there. But the question is, was that actually the place where they actually departed from? In actual fact, it's not. Local legend has it that the original Mayflower Steps, if you look at the photograph in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a building right in the middle of a white building. That's a public house called the Admiral McBride. Local legend has it that the original Mayflower Steps are actually underneath the ladies' toilets in that pub. That's actually an urban myth. The steps are actually somewhere in between the Mayflower Steps and the pub. It's reclaimed land, but it's a great urban myth, which we love telling people who come to Plymouth. And that ship you can see in the bottom left-hand side, that was something which was launched last year to commemorate the 400th anniversary of Mayflower Fathers. That is the Mayflower Autonomous Ship. That ship is, I think it did try to set sail a couple months back, but had to turn back to port. It is a completely unmanned ship, and it's going to sail from the UK to America, and it's able to actually navigate itself to avoid objects, etc. Magnificent feat of engineering. So hopefully that'll be setting sail again quite soon. Some of you may be familiar with Plymouth Gin, which is also found on Plymouth's historic Barbican. The Plymouth Gin distillery is on the site of the Blackfriars distillery. The photograph in the bottom right-hand corner there is a bottom of a bottle of Plymouth Gin. On the actual bottle is actually an engraving of a friar or a monk. And again, there's a great tale here. Basically, when you see that the feet of the friar is actually dry, that's when you know it's time to get a new bottle of gin. So it's a great marketing gimmick by the gin distillery there. It'd be remiss of me not to mention a few of Plymouth's famous figures. Sir Francis Drake, explorer, sea captain, naval officer, pirate, buccaneer, sadly a slave trader and a politician, but he did many great things for Plymouth and the city. But also he's synonymous with the defeating the Spanish Armada. Apparently when the Spanish fleets were coming to invade England, he was playing lawn bowls on Plymouth Hoe. He insisted on completing his game before he actually took his fleet out to confront the Armada. In reality, it's probably low tide at the time, so he couldn't actually set sail. But again, a great tale of bravery, shall we say, that, oh, let's just wait a little while and finish my game before we confront the Spanish. Lady Nancy Astor is another character I want to mention. She was the first woman to actually take a seat in the UK Parliament, and she was the Member of Parliament for Plymouth Sutton. I personally have a connection here in that my great-grandfather was one of her first confidants. There's a guy called Freddie Knox who was actually her most recognised confidant, but Freddie's father and my great-grandfather were great friends, and they used to spend a lot of time with Nancy Astor. Nancy Astor was well known for her put-downs in her when she gave speeches and for being a great speaker. But when she first started out campaigning, what she would find is she would get a lot of heckling when she was giving talks. It could be a case that she was given, say, 15 minutes to give a presentation. She would plan a talk for 15 minutes, but because of all the heckling, she couldn't get her entire message across. So the family legend is, my great-grandfather told her, well, if you only got 15 minutes, just write a speech for 10 minutes to buy yourself extra 5 minutes for the heckling, which by all accounts she did, and she was well known for her public speaking thereafter. So maybe my great-grandfather had something to do with that. Sporting wise, we've got a number of sports teams here. Plymouth Argyle Football Club, Plymouth Albion Rugby Club, which I mentioned Plymouth Albion Rotary Club earlier on. We had great links there. And in actual fact, back from about 2001 to about 2012, we had many South African players play for Plymouth Albion. And with the Rotary Club we had there at the time, they would actually help out with a number of our events, which is great to see, sort of thing. And I've always said it before, that rugby and Rotary sort of thing is a great connection at time with the ethos there. We've got a basketball team, Plymouth City Patriots, Speedway, and cricket. The photograph I've chosen there is actually of Heather Knight, a lady cricketer. She's actually the England ladies cricket captain. She actually comes from Plymouth. But I wanted to mention the rugby side of things because a little known fact is that Jimmy Peters, who played rugby union for Plymouth in 1906, he became the first black man to actually represent England in rugby. He actually played for England 5 times. In actual fact, he was the only black player for England until 1988. So that's something which Plymouth can be very proud of, the fact that England's first player of colour actually played for Plymouth. I'm touched upon sports here. I'm finishing off in a sort of a light mood. Britain, we have given the world many sports. We may not be very good at them, but we have given the world many sports. England, I will touch on countries here. England are the only Northern Hemisphere country to lift the Webadis Cup, the Rugby World Cup. We won't mention 2019. I will admit, you guys down in South Africa, you were the better team on the day. 2007, sorry, but Mark Uesu's foot was not in touch, so I'm still a bit bitter about that. And 91 with the Aussies, we won't dwell on that one. They were just lucky. And we won't mention earlier this year with a certain water carrier, guys. Let's just finish with well done with the Lions. You did well. And could Plymouth Albion please have some more South African players, because this year we have been awful. Doesn't have to be Faf, Seo, or Kobe, just any South African players, because we are rubbish this year. Thank you, guys. So that's a bit about Plymouth and my Rotary Club.